Hello, brains. Are you burned out? Have you been burned out? I feel like I'm burning out. Am I burned out? What is burnout? Burnout, noun, is a state of physical, mental, or emotional exhaustion. The term was coined in the 1970s by the American psychologist Herbert Freudenberger, who used it to describe the consequences of severe stress and high ideals in helping professions. Since then, the concept has expanded to include any profession. The main researchers who study burnout define it as a psychological syndrome emerging as a prolonged response to chronic interpersonal stressors on the job. That doesn't mean things outside work can't create a sense of physical, mental, or emotional exhaustion, but for the purposes of this video, I want to clarify what we know about burnout in terms of what most mental health professionals probably mean when they use the term, which is occupational burnout. Why? The ICD-11, which is a diagnostic manual, includes burnout specifically as a workplace phenomenon and defines it as a syndrome conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. One of the brains explains it as soul-sucking emptiness and despair where caring and passion for my work used to exist. A lack of joy in success and mounting dread of my failures. Exhaustion, apathy, and dread every time I think about work. Desire to curl up and never move. Which is actually pretty accurate. According to ICD-11, occupational burnout isn't just about being tired. In fact, it's characterized by 3 dimensions: feelings of energy depletion or exhaustion, increased mental distance from one's job, or feelings of negativism or cynicism related to one's job, and reduced professional efficacy. While employees are often quick to blame themselves and may even try to hide the fact that they're struggling, the researchers who study burnout recognize that it's a systemic issue caused by a mismatch between people and their work. And they've identified 6 dimensions in which those mismatches tend to happen. Workload, too much work, not enough resources. Control, micromanagement, lack of influence, accountability without power. Reward, which means not enough pay or acknowledgement or satisfaction. Community, which can include isolation, conflict, disrespect. Fairness, including discrimination, favoritism, and values, things like ethical conflicts or meaningless tasks. A few mismatches are tolerable, but significant mismatches or mismatches in areas that are important to someone can lead to burnout. Addressing those mismatches can increase engagement, which is protective against burnout. Burnout disproportionately affects those with ADHD and other mental health conditions, including PTSD. And currently, most workplaces don't do a great job of preventing it. In fact, they may encourage employees to push through it, but doing so actually makes it worse. Even once the stressor is over, the damage is done, and often long-lasting. So burnout as a workplace phenomenon is a term we need to know and be able to talk about with our employers, employees, patients, and partners. Here are some helpful things to remember when talking about it. People don't burn out because they're weak. They burn out because of a mismatch between them and their work that they've pushed through long enough trying to be good employees that their brains and/or bodies have essentially gone on strike and refused to keep working under these conditions. So reversing burnout isn't something they can do on their own by taking a vacation. They and the organization have to address the mismatch. Someone with ADHD excitedly hyper-focusing on a project and then being exhausted and needing recovery time is not the same as burnout. That's just how our brains work, and trying to force somebody to work differently in order to prevent burnout can actually contribute to it. So can taking work off our plate that we feel effective at and find rewarding. Again, it's about the fit between people and their work. When addressing burnout, we can't forget to account for the people part. Burnout is something that should be tackled in collaboration. Finally, addressing burnout is good for everyone. If it's caught early and the mismatches are addressed, it can be easy to recover from. But chronic burnout can take months or even years to get back to where we can work effectively. Employers and employees have the same goal: for the employee to be able to work well and contribute. And we can't do that if we're burned out. I've linked to more information in the description below, and I'll be doing more episodes on this topic in the future. But in the meantime, let's start talking about it. This episode is sponsored by the Hero's Journal, which is a personal planner designed to turn your goal into an epic adventure. I talked about the original Hero's Journal in this episode. It was designed for ADHD brains by ADHD brains, and it's based on science and fantasy nerdiness, all of which I really appreciate. I'm talking about it again because A, I still really love it, and B, they have a new version available, Magic Academy, and it's even more impressive. The artwork is just as beautiful, super fun, and it changes every day to encourage you to come back and continue your adventure. And it can now ship internationally. If you have trouble staying focused on your goals, which most of us with ADHD do, this is a fantastic planner that's designed to help. The first few pages guide you to define your overall quest. Something I'm working on right now is learning to have fun. Every day there's space to choose a quest for that day, something to move you toward your bigger quest. You can write out your schedule and then define your priorities for the day to help you stay focused. There's even space to identify your allies and your threats, things that might get in the way of your goals and things that can help. The pages are undated, so you can start using it whenever. And if you're like me and forget to use your daily planner daily, there's no wasted space or shame of missing days. I love this journal so much because it's incredibly ADHD friendly, and it's designed to help us drop the shame we so often feel about having trouble sticking to our goals and help us build a positive narrative about productivity instead. If you'd like to try the Heroes Journal or buy one for a friend, click on the link in the description below and use code HOWTOADHD. Thank you to my brain advocates and all my Patreon brains. Your support gives my team and I more control over the kind of content we make and allows us to adjust our workload when we need to without losing the reward of being able to pay rent, which helps us not burn out. Hello, brains. Are you burned out?
Wouldn't it be great to have an organization where people are inspired to go to work? They are happy, engaged, and love what they do while they're there, and then feel fulfilled when they go home. This is what we call a happy and engaging place to work. Through our years of experience and conducting extensive research, we've created a robust model that identifies 5 drivers which are key to achieving a happy and engaging place to work. Those drivers are people, leadership, agility, culture, and environment. Let's take a look at each one. People. Only with the right people in your organization can you create a happy and engaging place to work. Not only should your people be a good job fit, but they also need to work well with the team, be a team fit, and be aligned with your culture, a culture fit. In addition to this, they need to be doing what they love, making a difference and feeling valued. Companies don't succeed, people do. Leadership. It needs to start at the top of the organization, where leaders have a clear purpose with soul and a clear vision which cascades through the organization. You need a cohesive leadership team which inspires and builds trust and genuinely cares for your people. Leaders also need to inspire, challenge, and create stretch. Agility. Your organization needs to be agile with exciting opportunities for people to grow. Developing a high-impact learning culture to support the organization's growth and success is also important. Creating agile teams for specific projects will help enhance engagement and increase productivity and efficiency. Culture. You need to create an intentional, embedded culture where your values are truly lived and people enjoy working together, creating camaraderie. Your culture should be evident to anyone dealing with your organization. What's the vibe in your tribe? Environment. An awesome environment where people are literally inspired to come to work every day is essential. In addition to the physical environment, you need to create a rhythm of activities, tools and processes to drive engagement and enable everyone to be aligned. Make sure your policies and procedures also support the work environment. Wouldn't it be great to have an organization where people are inspired to go to work? They are happy, engaged, and love what they do while they're there, and then feel fulfilled when they go home. This is what we call a happy and engaging place to work. Through our years of experience and conducting extensive research, we've created a robust model that identifies 5 drivers which are key to
Life is not easy. It is not. Don't try to make it that way. Life's not fair. It never was. It isn't now, and it won't ever be. Do not fall into the trap, the entitlement trap, of feeling like you're a victim. You are not. Get over it and get on with it. And yes, most things are more rewarding when you break a sweat to get them. The first step that leads to our identity in life is usually not, I know who I am. I know who I am. That's not the first step. The first step's usually, I know who I am not. Process of elimination. Defining ourselves by what we are not is the first step that leads us to really knowing who we are. Because you just eliminated the who's, the where's, the what's, and the when's that were keeping you from your identity. Like, trust me, too many options, I promise you this, too many options will make a tyrant of us all. All right, so get rid of the excess, the wasted time. Decrease your options. And if you do this, you will have accidentally, almost innocently, put in front of you what is important to you. Now, when I was 15 years old, I had a very important person in my life come to me and say, who's your hero? And I said, I don't know, I got to think about that. Give me a couple of weeks. I come back 2 weeks later. This person comes up and says, who's your hero? I said, I thought about it. You know who it is? I said, it's me in 10 years. So I turned 25 10 years later. That same person comes to me and goes, so are you a hero? And I was like, not even close. No. She said, why? I said, because my hero is me at 35. So you see, every day, every week, every month, and every year of my life, my hero is always 10 years away. I'm never going to be my hero. I'm not going to attain that. I know I'm not. And that's just fine with me because that keeps me with somebody to keep on chasing. All right, life is not a popularity contest. Be brave, take the hill, but first answer that question, what's my hill? Knowing who we are is hard. It's hard. So give yourself a break.
All right, can they hear me? Or is the music still playing? They can hear you. Wow, it's amazing. Technology's kicking my ass today. This thing is awesome. Look at me, flying around the globe. Who knew I was hanging out in outer space? Just me. Go besting all over the world. That's how we do it. So, first of all, Happy New Year's, everybody. Welcome to 2024. Thank all of you for taking time out of your busy lives to join us in this all-cast meeting. This is our first meeting of 2024, and it's a very important meeting for our network of fun. This is the meeting where we are going to go over anti-discrimination, sexual harassment, anti-sexual harassment, anti-abusive conduct, and sensitivity. My favorite part, as you guys know, is my very sensitive. So I look forward to the sensitivity part of this program. Before that, go Lions! That's right. Hopefully everybody in Michigan's super excited, like I am, to get to see the Lions playing in the NFC Championship. It is going to be amazing. Sorry about those 6 or 7 49ers fans that have signed on today. For the rest of you, as we know, it is Detroit against everybody. So let's make that happen. And we're also going to cover a couple of different things that we want to talk about, and then we'll roll right into Miss Deanna Forbush, who's going to review everything there is to know about sexual harassment and anti-discrimination. So before we do that, let's talk about our mission statement. As always, the first thing we want to do is remind ourselves of the year, what we're trying to do. We are delivering an immersive adventure, harnessing masterful showmanship, outrageous service, and an over-the-top experience. We want every guest to have their mind blown when they visit our businesses, because that's what we're all about. And if we did that, if their mind is blown, then we have delivered the Go Best factor, the excitement a guest feels from the moment they discover our venues, which reignites every time they remember their experience. So important that they have a positive memory. We want them to remember what a great time they had, because when they have a memory that is positive, they tell all of their friends, and then they return. They want to come back to your business, and they want to enjoy your company again because they had that fantastic experience. Without that reigniting, without that memory, they're never coming back again. You've lost them. So make sure you're leaving those brain stickers in every single guest that comes to visit your business. And then this year is going to be all about back to basics for all of us. The objective we have is focusing on ourselves, focusing on our core business, making sure we're doing a good job of making sure our core guest is happy. It is wonderful to have all of these high-ticket menu items. It is wonderful to have all of these VIP rooms. It is wonderful to have all of these high-end drinks and these cocktail menus. All of this is great stuff, but this is the gravy of our industry. We still need to focus on that core clientele, that core guest, the main focus of our business, that meat and potato personality. It's the person that comes in every week and buys a new toy. It's the person that uses the theater every week. It's the person that comes in the club every week, buys a couple of drinks and buys a couple of dances. This is our core guest. This is the people we have to focus on this year. We have to increase the volume of those people because this is going to be a challenging year for everybody. Very, very difficult during election years to bring in new guests. So we're going to be very reliant on our current guests, our repeat guests, and getting our guests to stay longer. So it's super important for all of you to have a focus and pay attention to each one of these guests' needs to ensure that they have a fantastic visit and they want to keep coming back to our business over and over and over again. So things we can do to do that. Always remember the 5 A's. Always be recruiting. This is recruiting your friends to come to the club. This is recruiting new guests to come to the club. This is recruiting people you see in the street that do a great job to come work with you and join your cast. This is recruiting new vendors. All of this is all about recruiting. So get out there and recruit. Always be learning. Take time to educate yourself. Don't be afraid to watch videos on everything to do with the industry that you enjoy. Learn new stuff. Read new books, talk to people in the industry, get involved with your management, find new ways to learn new things to make yourself more productive and useful for your business. Always be proud. Be proud of what you do. Be proud of where you work. Wear your logos. Get out there and promote the business. If you aren't out there talking about where you work, if you aren't out there socializing with people, if you aren't there networking and wearing something that has your brand on it, you're doing a disservice to yourself and your entire team. So get out there and be proud. And always be closing. When you're out there, you got to be closing the sale, whether you're meeting somebody in the club, whether you're meeting somebody in the store, whether you're meeting somebody out and about. Close the deal. Find a way to get them to come into your business. Make sure they have your phone number. Make sure they can text you directly to come inside and say hello to you and be a part of that amazing experience I know you wait to deliver every single day. And be throwing that fantastic party. Absolutely every day, you've got to have an awesome party going on, whether there's 1 guest or 100 guests. Always throw the same amazing party. Excuses versus execution. It's very simple, people. You can either make excuses or you can make shit happen. You can't do both. If you're not out there trying to make something happen, then you're just making excuses for your failures. Don't be an excuse maker. Be somebody that gets out there and does great execution. Events, shows, promotions, they only fail due to poor execution. That's as simple as it is. The craziest and silliest ideas out there end up working because everybody in the cast, the whole team gets involved. They get excited, and they get out there, and they make something happen. You've got to be those people this year. 2024 counts on all of us putting in that little bit of extra effort to do a little better job than we did last year. And always remember the 5 Ps. Very simple. Proper preparation prevents a piss poor performance. That's it. Don't be fucking piss poor out there. Perform well, prepare, get out there, be organized, be involved, be the best team and cast member that you can be. And above all, have your situational awareness. This is keeping your head on a swivel, paying attention to the entire room, looking around for things that can be opportunities to give your guests a better experience. If you see your guests with their arms folded, if they're looking off into outer space, they're not having fun, people. You got to make sure they're having fun. If they're not having fun, they're going to go someplace else that's fun. It's that simple. Make sure they have the service and the products that they want. If they're looking for a certain toy, we've got to find those toys. If they're looking for a certain drink, we got to make those drinks. If they just want a nice, full, tall draft Bud Light and they want to keep drinking it all night long, make sure it stays full, because an empty cup is a reason to leave, and we don't want our guests to leave. We want them to stay and have fun. And above all, no matter what business you're in, what part of our industry and part of our network of fun you're involved in, you have to make sure the businesses are clean. They're well kept. They're organized. They're safe. They're well lit. They're well maintained. If a guest doesn't feel safe inside your business, they're not going to come in. If they stick into the table, if there's gum under the table, they're not going to come back. You don't want to go to a place like that. So make sure the business you represent, the business that you're proud of, is maintained better than you would maintain your own home. That's the key to the success for 2024. People are looking for clean, safe businesses with fantastic service and great entertainment. And that is your guys' goal and my goal for 2024. So stick to that. And that's what we have to talk about on that end. And now I'm going to move the show to our illustrious lawyer, Miss Deanna Forbush is in charge of all kinds of different wonderful things. But the thing you may know most is you've seen her name inside of your hire packs or on some of the signs at several of our businesses. This is the woman that you contact if you have a complaint, an issue, or anything of the sort, and she helps you sort it out. She is on our side to make everything communication-wise when it comes to this topic smoother and easier. So now you can put a name with the face. And without further ado, let me bring her to the stage, Miss Deanna Forbush. Hi, my lovely friend. How are you?
Nice to see you.
Welcome to the crew. I turn over the entire cast. You are now talking to over 500 people, and they can't wait to hear what you have to say about the lines. I mean, sexual harassment and discrimination.
You are a very hard act to follow. I mean, I used to tell people, well, if you fail to prepare, you must prepare to fail. But now I'm going to use the 5 Ps.
You like that one?
Can someone send those to me?
Yes, we'll send those over. Summer, make sure she gets the 5 Ps, because we
better.
won't want Deanna to have a piss poor performance. That's for sure.
That's exactly right. All right. Well,
Room is yours. Enjoy.
Mr. Money took you to outer space, and I'm going to have to bring you back down to Earth, sadly. As he said, today is our January anti-discrimination, anti-harassment, and with emphasis on anti-sexual harassment, anti-abusive conduct, and sensitivity seminar. So we're really happy you're all here. We're live today, so don't know how many hundreds of you are that are out there, but we want you all to participate. There's a live feed. You can put your questions in the chat. There's a phone number that you can text questions to. We've got people here monitoring them, and we're going to get them addressed as we talk to you today together. So participate. This is interactive. I know you're going to have questions when we bring up topics that are, either your pet peeves or your Achilles heels or things that you just want to know more about. So make sure you get us your questions, and we'll try to get you responses today. Also, we really want you to pay attention today, because today is just, our 1.0 seminar. There'll be a quiz afterward. It's something that we're going to take quite seriously. You'll have to respond to it in writing, and then we'll review it in section 2.1, and we'll see how well you did. But why are we here today? Well, the primary thing we want to do is talk about the company and its policies, and how do we, where that book's already written, right? It's called your handbook. Everything that you need to know, everything we're going to cover today, every single question that you're going to have as you proceed in your career with the Go Best Network for Fun. The answer is in that handbook, and it's been written for you very carefully so that it comports to our specific kinds of businesses, and to give you all the information you need to make sure that you comply with the law, and that your managers and supervisors also comply with the law in your employment. Make sure your rights are protected. But so any question you're ever going to have, the answer is in your handbook. We're going to review what you can expect from the company and what the company can expect from you. So what does the company expect from you? They expect you to know the policies, follow the policies. If you're a manager or supervisor, make sure that you're enforcing the policies even-handedly and uniformly to avoid disparate treatment. And if you're an employee, you'll know what kind of behavior is required from you, because every single employment issue is addressed in your handbook. You're also going to learn what you can expect from the company, and what can you expect from this company. It's also in the handbook. You can expect to be treated fairly, equitably, and equally. You're guaranteed a safe and productive and legally compliant work environment. We have an open door policy that we really want you to understand and utilize. We want to know what you think, how you feel. If you have concerns, you have issues, we want you to use the open door policy. And then there are other avenues of communication too. If the open door doesn't work, or talking to your managers or supervisors doesn't work, we have an attorney hotline. The number will be on one of the slides coming up, and there's also an email address you can use, info@clubconcerns.com. There's always a way to talk to somebody about your concerns or issues. So what are we covering today? The slides are going faster than I'm going, but I'll catch up. So we're going to talk about the company's values. what are the company's values? They include, their efforts to keep you safe and in a healthy work environment, one that's legally compliant, where its employees can flourish and succeed and find fulfillment and success and advancement. And we also, have a value that we want strong customer service. We want to make sure all of our employees provide our guests with unmatched guest experiences. What does that mean? So if you're here today, that means that you've been selected to work for one of the best entertainment companies in this country. So what does that mean to me? That means you're one of the best of the best. The company is making an investment in you by having you here even today. They're investing in you, make sure you have the information you need, the tools you need to be successful, and that you have every opportunity you need to succeed. So in return, the company just asks that you know its policies, that you comply with its policies. If you're a manager, supervisor, make sure you are enforcing the policies uniformly, even-handedly, and that you're creating a legally compliant work environment, and that you provide the company's patrons with an unmatched guest experience. So that's the formula for a win-win situation. It's easy, right? So today, what we're going to do is jump right into the alphabet soup of discrimination law. So we talk about harassment and discrimination, but harassment is a form of discrimination. So harassment's a form of discrimination, and sexual harassment is a form of harassment. So it's all part of the big umbrella of discrimination law. And there are a few laws that cover that basically encompass that, and we're going to talk about them today. The first thing we want to talk about is the company's policy on equal employment opportunity. So the GoBest Network and all of its affiliated entities are equal employment opportunity employers. What does that mean? It means that it makes employment decisions without any kind of thought toward any kind of a protected category. Well, what are protected categories? They're basically personal characteristics that distinguish people from other people. It could be their race. What does their race mean? It's their special, their culture that they come from, perhaps. Their color. Color is a distinct category all by itself. So there might be somebody with brown skin, but it could be dark brown, light brown. People call it chocolate milk brown. There are all kinds of different words that have been used in different cases that we've dealt with, but color is certainly a protected characteristic. National origin, what does that mean? That's the country you come from. So if you were born in Canada, your national origin would be Canadian, right? Age is a protected category. Employees over 40, over the age of 40, are protected against discriminatory conduct. And then sex, a person's gender. When people say sex discrimination, we're talking about gender discrimination. And that means being discriminated against because you're a male or a female, or you identify as one or the other. Also, there's disability discrimination, medical condition, pregnancy. That's all kind of part of one protected group, and religion. And there are many other classifications that are identified in local and state laws. But as an equal opportunity employer, the GoBest Network does not make any employment decision, which you see those down on your slide in red, any employment decision like hiring or determining what kind of pay, go back to the other equal, what kind of pay, whether you're being promoted, disciplined, terminated, none of those kinds of employment-based decisions will be based on any protected characteristic. And that's what it means to be an equal employment opportunity employer, and that's what GoBest is. So going to the next slide, where we also have a policy on discrimination, but it's not our discrimination policy, it's our anti-discrimination policy. So it's all said in the title, right? Discrimination is not permitted. We're against it, it's anti, it's prohibited, actually. So So discrimination is the definition of discrimination is treating a person differently with regard to its terms or conditions of employment because of its protected characteristic, that person's protected characteristic. So if someone, applies for a job and they don't get hired because, they're from Cuba, they were discriminated against. They got treated differently because of their protected characteristic, meaning their national origin, right? And GoBest policy is that no employee will be treated differently because of any protected category. And it's not just that, discriminating against employees is unfair and not right. It's also a violation of the law. So Title VII of the Civil Rights Act is a federal law that prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. Then we have many state laws and local and county government laws that protect all other kinds of categories, the kind that we talked about in the very beginning under our equal employment slide. So your marital status, your military service, your condition, whether you're pregnant or not pregnant, all kinds of categories are protected under state and local law. And then there's the Americans with Disabilities Act that protects or prohibits discrimination against people with disabilities, and the Age Discrimination and Employment Act that is the one I was telling you about that prohibits discrimination against employees that are 40 or older. So obviously, our policy against discrimination is because we want our employees treated fairly and not have, treated based on their merit and not because of their protected characteristics. But it's also a violation of the laws that I just told you about. And the third reason why we want to make sure that people are treated fairly and that we comply with the law is because lawsuits, when we don't comply with the law, are extremely expensive. Expensive lawsuits can really destroy your bottom line. You work all year to make sure that your businesses are successful and that you've made money and you're expecting a big bonus at the end of the year because you've done well, the stars aligned, made a lot of money, and then you get hit with a lawsuit. And the way this company is set up, those legal fees come right off of your bottom line. Everybody doesn't have to share in that expense. You get to pay for that because you made or allegedly made the mistake. We always say allegedly because we presume that you're innocent, that you haven't made a mistake till we find out. But it's very costly. It damages the reputation not only of the alleged perpetrator. So let's say a manager gets named in a lawsuit because he allegedly sexually harassed a waitress. Well, let's say that an investigation is conducted and it's decided that that person probably did do something wrong and they get fired. Well, now that person's reputation is destroyed, right? Now, good luck going out and finding another job with that on your resume. It also hurts the employer's reputation because who wants to go to work for someone that is constantly getting sued for violating the law, especially when it comes to employment or equal rights or civil rights laws. So there are lots of reasons to make sure that the company's policy against any form of discrimination is complied with. So next slide. Another reason why we have our policies against discrimination is that treating people differently because of their protected characteristic or their unique characteristics or categories, whether it's their race, their color, their gender, their religion, treating people differently because of the groups, the special groups they fit in, is really, really bad for morale. As you see in our slide, these fellows are having a big laugh, it's just a guy thing, probably talking about sports or something, but the poor lady feels left out and not part of the group. And who wants to feel that way at work? That's segregating people because of their different types of characteristics, right? Nobody wants to be discriminated against or treated differently because for something they can't control, like the color of their skin or their handicaps or disabilities. It's it's a complete violation of our policy to treat people differently because of their protected characteristics. So that's harassment. And how is that different? I mean, that's discrimination. And how is that different from harassment? Well, just to recap, discrimination is the different treatment of people based solely on their protected characteristic. But harassment in the workplace is the unwelcome verbal, visual, or physical conduct that's based on a protected characteristic. And it has to be so severe and pervasive that it creates an intimidating, offensive, and hostile work environment. That's the legal definition of harassment. It's a lot to unpack there. But it generally includes conduct that is denigrating, that shows hostility or some sort of an aversion to someone based on their protected characteristics. So if you see someone that's from Malaysia and you have an aversion, you don't want to be around that people, not my kind of person, right? That's a form of stay back on the harassment slide. That's a form of harassment. So when we say it's verbal or visual or physical conduct, verbal conduct is quite obvious, right? Because it's making a racial slur, it's making a sexually suggestive comment, it's pestering someone, asking someone out constantly when they tell you no repeatedly. That's a form of verbal harassment. Teasing somebody, making jokes constantly around them when you can see they're annoyed. Even if someone laughs at your jokes, it doesn't mean that they're accepting it or they're not bothered by it. That it's just because someone laughs, it might be out of nervousness or just trying to get through an awkward situation. But it can be a form of verbal conduct that constitutes harassment, just like insulting someone because of their disability, calling them a name. Somebody's got a disfigured leg maybe, and you call them limp or something like that, and you think that's funny and everybody thinks it's funny, but that poor employee feels awful, and it's a form of harassment if it's severe and pervasive and it creates a hostile work environment. Visual conduct is also not something that you have to say. You can harass somebody with just your movements. Like you could have hand gestures or body gestures simulating a sexual position or act. You could text people or send electronic messages, put up suggestive photographs or posters in your office, circulate cartoons that are off color or racist or overly sexual. Same with jokes. Jokes can be verbal or visual. Even your computer display. We had a case where an employee had a computer display that was very offensive to several Black people that worked in their department, and it had to be removed. We have to be sensitive to everyone that we work with, and visual conduct, if it's denigrating, shows hostility, or some kind of aversion to people with certain characteristics, they could be considered harassment and they won't be condoned. And there's also physical kinds of conduct that can be harassing. For example, intentionally bumping into somebody you don't like, or rubbing up against somebody, or giving somebody a back rub they didn't ask for. Any kind of unwanted touching, that could be a form of physical harassment. So the key is unwelcome verbal, visual, or physical conduct that creates an intimidating, offensive, or hostile work environment that is so severe and pervasive that it makes people feel like they don't want to come to work or they can't bear to come to work. And the classic case that really defines harassment in the workplace is an old case that went to the Supreme Court about a woman that became a carpenter. She came from a long line of carpenters. Her father was a carpenter, her grandfather was a carpenter, and she went to school and she became a journeyman carpenter. She was so proud when she got her journeyman card, and she got a job in the local carpenter shop. She was so excited. She went to work, and the day she suited up, her tool belt, her work overalls, went to work, walked into the shop, and all the guys were sitting at a big coffee table and just glared at her and jeered at her and started making comments like, the little lady's here, and I wonder if she can punk any iron, and or wood rather, and making fun of her. And then she noticed in the break room there it was covered with Playboy centerfolds and all kinds of very suggestive photographs, and she thought, well, okay, I can get through this. I'll just, buck up, do a really good job, show him who I am. And then the next several months, she worked very hard. They were relentless in their abuse of her. They would follow her around the yard, drop things in front of her. She would have to bend over. They would push her over when she bent down to get them. They were always leering at her, bringing bikinis to work, telling her to put them on, see if she would work in them. And it just didn't stop. Finally, she didn't want to do this, but finally she just couldn't bear it. She couldn't imagine that her whole dream would just go up in smoke, that she wasn't going to be able to be a carpenter. So she went to her boss and complained. And the boss said, well, what did you expect was going to happen when you came to work in a male environment? What did you think the environment was going to be like here? Boys will be boys. Either you can take it or you don't take it. It's up to you. But this is, you came to the nuisance, in other words, right? You knew what it was going to be like here. And so she had to quit. I mean, the stress affected her health. She couldn't work. She couldn't even bear to walk into the work environment. She just would become overwhelmed with anxiety. So she filed a lawsuit, and, she alleged it was a form of gender discrimination, which of course it became after this case was decided. And the court created this hostile work environment kind of concept. And they said that when behavior is based solely on gender, so if she was a man, they wouldn't have been doing this, right? So it was behavior based solely on gender. It creates an environment that's so hostile and so offensive and so intimidating that it's so severe and pervasive that it becomes impossible for the employee to come to work. Then the employees have created a hostile work environment, an illegal hostile work environment. And because this employer had been told about the environment, the court awarded not only her damages, but very severe, several $1 million worth of punitive damages against the company. And so that's a hostile work environment. When you create an environment that is so difficult for someone to come to work in, and you're doing it all because they're different than you are, then that can be a legal environment that your employer is responsible for. And it's an illegal environment that you should never have to suffer. And you're not going to ever suffer an environment like that working for this company, because they have a policy against it. They have absolute zero tolerance for any kind of harassment in the workplace. So our policy also covers third-party discrimination and harassment. We won't accept or permit harassment from coworkers or from managers against their employees, and certainly not from vendors or guests. So the same policy applies to our guests. If any of our guests treat our employees with anything less than respect or dignity, they should be told once. Either they improve their behavior or they should be asked to leave and not return. And we'll get to the complaint procedures in a few minutes, but obviously if any employee is ever forced to suffer harassment, discrimination, or any of the behaviors that we've discussed so far, the first thing they have to do is tell the people to stop their behavior, and then report it immediately to your immediate supervisor. or if the supervisor is the perpetrator, or you don't feel comfortable talking to the supervisor, then the manager. And if both your supervisor and manager are unavailable, then any supervisor or manager. And if they're not available, call the attorney hotline or send an email to info@clubconcerns.com, and someone will be in touch with you about your complaint. So, as we said, every form of harassment is illegal under the law, and it's also prohibited under our policies. But sexual harassment deserves a special, because it's the most prevalent type of complaint we get, we spend a little extra time talking about sexual harassment. Frankly, most of the cases that we read on discrimination and harassment are based on gender. So when we say sexual harassment, that really means gender harassment. Harassment or discrimination that you're being subjected to because of your gender or because of your gender identity. All right, so we said that harassment involves behavior that's unwelcome. Obviously, it has to be unwelcome, and it's severe and pervasive, and it's always based on some protected characteristic like race or age or color or religion, gender, national origin. And whenever any kind of different behavior, different treatment is being doled out to any of our employees based solely on their protected characteristic, that will be a violation of our policy, and that will be dealt with accordingly. But like I said, the most discrimination cases are based on gender. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about sexual harassment. There are two different types of sexual harassment that we see in the workplace. And the first one is the hostile work environment that we just talked about, the Carpenter case. That's exactly the type of sexual harassment that is called hostile work environment harassment. And so I'm not going to repeat, those elements, but just to refresh you, when the work environment is so sexually charged and the conduct is so severe and pervasive, and it's all based on someone's gender, and it's so hostile and so intimidating that employees can't do their work. That's the textbook definition of sexual harassment. So the Carpenter case is the perfect example. That's the one you just have to think about. Imagine that carpenter shop with the posters on the wall and the jeering and the catcalling and the relentlessness of it. Them telling sexual jokes in front of her and creating an environment that was unbearable. Other types of environments that could be hostile are when employees purposely segregate certain types of employees. So we have, there was a business in Utah. They had several Pacific Islanders that worked there, but the Caucasian people never would invite them to lunch, always left them on their own, always took the best shifts, always got the days off before they did, and it created such a hostile work environment that certain segment of the employment population was being treated differently simply because of where they came from. And that was a case that had to be settled because it was just obvious, open, notorious, and unhealthy and illegal. The second type of sexual harassment that we run into is a little more direct. It's called quid pro quo sexual harassment. And that's usually your Latin test. That could probably be on your test that you're going to see. What does that mean? This for that. So it's essentially just like our little guy there on the slide says, if you escort me to the ball on Saturday, I'll give you the rest of the week off. So you escort me to the ball and I'll give you the week off. That's, I'm giving you this and you're giving me that. Quid pro quo. You're giving me this for that. That's the type of sexual harassment that that was what we originally saw before the hostile work environment concept was created. It was more direct. It basically occurs when the submission to a sexual favor is made a condition of employment. For example, you want to keep your job, you'd better go out with me Friday night. That kind of thing. It's you have to do something because of your gender. I wouldn't be doing this to a man, for example, or whatever my preference is. Presumably it's being done because of your gender. You're going to, a condition of your workplace, one of your terms and conditions of employment is conditioned on you giving some sort of sexual favor. That's quid pro quo sexual harassment. Another basis, another type is when giving up a sexual favor is the basis for a decision. So yes, raises are coming up, but if you want that raise, make sure you are at my apartment Friday night. That's when the basis of an employment decision is predicated upon a sexual favor. Both of these examples demonstrate quid pro quo, illegal sexual harassment that will not be tolerated in our work environment. And if you're subjected to it or hear about it or witness it, report it. See where so people think sexual harassment takes place between men and women. That's not the case. Certainly men can sexually harass women. Women can certainly harass men. Women bosses can sexually harass their male employees. It's not stereotypically just the male boss that sexually harasses the woman employee. Men can sexually harass men, and women can sexually harass women, because it's just, think about the core definition of this. Is this behavior happening because of my gender? Would this woman be hitting on me if I was a man? Probably not, so that's also sexual harassment based on gender. The company is very sensitive to the diversity that we have in our population and very proud of it, and wants to do everything it can to promote it. And so the policy is very broad. It covers any kind of discrimination, whether it's whether it's transgenders, gender nonconforming people, people that identify in their own particular way. It seems like this changes a lot every day, and whatever an employee needs to feel comfortable in the workplace is what they're going to get when they work for GoBest Network. Where possible, in most of our businesses, we try to have gender neutral restrooms. If it's impossible in any certain facility, then employees are more than welcome to use restrooms that align with their gender identity. That's what we encourage them to do. That's what we want them to do. So those are the primary laws that prohibit discrimination, and our policies that comport with the laws, because we want to be sure that we have a legally compliant work environment, and a work environment where our employees feel comfortable and safe and can flourish. But it's not just illegal activity that violates the company's policies. There's other behavior that is equally as prohibited, and for example, bullying. We have an anti-bullying policy, and the company's policy prohibits any intentional behavior that any reasonable person would find hostile, intimidating, or offensive. Now, it might not be illegal conduct. Somebody could just be being mean or cruel. And I like to call this our no jerk policy. So sometimes, we get a lawsuit and a young lawyer will say, did that rise to the severe and pervasive standard? Is this really harassment? It doesn't sound like it. It sounds like the guy was just a jerk. Well, that, is a violation of our anti-bullying policy, being a jerk. It's not permitted. whether, the behavior is severe enough to be illegal, it doesn't matter. Any kind of cruel or bullying, rude behavior at work is unacceptable and a violation of this policy. Employees are required to treat their coworkers with dignity, respect, and kindness at all times. That's just the kind of employer that Go Best Network is. And if you can't do that, you don't belong here, because everyone that works here needs to feel safe, comfortable, and protected. And if there's at any time when any employee doesn't feel that way, they need to use one of the avenues we've talked about so far, and we're going to talk about a little bit more in a minute, but report it to your supervisor, your manager, or any manager or any supervisor, or call the attorney hotline or send an email. Because this company works very hard. That's why they're having this presentation today, so that you know what your rights are, you know how to protect them, and that the managers and supervisors know what the policies are that they have to even-handedly enforce. So it's not just illegal conduct, it's also conduct that violates our no jerk policy. So that brings us to what I've been alluding to a little bit about today, but people sometimes say, okay, well, this has happened to me. I'm glad you told me about this. This has happened to me. What do I do? Well, you might not be surprised to know that we have a policy on that, and it's called the complaint procedure, and it or a response back. And if it's not the same day, it's within a day or two. But what is the report responsibility for our employees? If you experience discrimination, somebody treats you differently because of your protected characteristic, or you experience harassment, the work environment is just so overly charged, sexually overcharged or racially overcharged, and you can't bear to go to work, or somebody's bullying you, or you don't feel safe, so you experience this behavior, you must immediately report it. Even if you witness it happening to someone else, you are required to report it. Even if you just hear about it, you are required to report it. And it's not optional. You can actually get in trouble yourself. You can actually be disciplined yourself if you don't report any of these behaviors, because the company can't fix problems that it doesn't know about, right? And like the Carpenter case, that employer got charged with knowing. That employer actually said, well, Your Honor, how could I have fixed this? She didn't complain to me. Well, she said she complained to you. And the company said, well, she didn't. We have no record of her complaining. And then the judge said, this harassment, this behavior was so open, so notorious. I mean, these naked pictures were plastered on the wall. This is, you couldn't have missed this behavior. So you're responsible for it. Even in those cases where it's open and notorious, you must still report. And that's our ironclad policy. So like I said, start with when you have a comment, even if it doesn't have to be a complaint, right? You have a comment you think would make your business better or make things work better, open door policy. Go to your supervisor, go to your manager. If you have a comment, if you have a complaint, try the open door policy. But if you experience or or witness or hear about actual discrimination, actual harassment, it's mandatory reporting. So that's when you go to the supervisor, manager. Those avenues don't work. Call the hotline or send an email. There is absolutely no excuse. There is no acceptable excuse. I've heard a lot of them, and there's no acceptable excuse to not reporting an incident, because that's how we fix things. That's how we address things. That's how we make people safe, is when we know about what's happening. So jot down that hotline, and just remember that if you fail to fulfill your duty, that's also going to result in some problems for you. So don't let that happen. We've given you every avenue you need to be able to report. And don't discourage anybody from lodging a complaint. If you have a friend, a coworker that comes to you and says, something terrible happened to me last night, but I don't want anyone to know. I'm just telling you because if anything happens, then you'll know. And I don't want to make a big deal out of it. I just wanted to tell you. And you think, well, she's my friend. She confided in me. She or he confided in me. I've got to respect their wishes. They said, don't tell anybody, right? Well, then I won't. Wrong. Your first duty as an employee of this company and all of its related entities, your first duty is to that company. That company is paying you for your time, and it has duties to you, lots of them. We've talked about them today, but you also have duties to it, and your first duty is to your employer. If somebody tells you they're in harm's way, something bad has happened to them at work, there's a situation that they're uncomfortable with, you must immediately report it, even if they said, please don't tell anyone. Never discourage anyone from making a complaint. And managers and supervisors, especially you, if someone says, please don't tell anyone, I don't want anyone to know, you just have to tell them honestly. The company will do its best to preserve and protect your anonymity, but there's no guarantee. You've told us, and it's your duty to tell us, and we'll do our best to protect you, but there's no guarantee of anonymity. And because we have to do everything possible to investigate the complaint and then take the appropriate action. So, what happens after the complaints are made? The supervisor or manager that the report is made to will gather as much evidence as that person can, whether it's create an incident report, gather witness statements where appropriate, or just simply turn it over to the attorneys to let them handle it. The matter will be investigated. Don't ever try to investigate a situation yourself, but do attempt to preserve whatever evidence you have, whether that's managers and supervisors making sure you preserve any surveillance if that's relevant. Get witness statements if you can, but the run-of-the-mill employment type discrimination or harassment complaints, that's not relevant. That's more relevant when you have an incident, in the workplace involving a customer, and witness statements and surveillance. But very rarely is that relevant with an employee complaint. But if it is, make sure you take steps necessary to preserve evidence. I'm talking to managers and supervisors right now, but whether a manager or supervisor takes that complaint and then gives it to their regional manager or whoever their direct report is, that complaint eventually has to find its way to the lawyers who will investigate the situation and then work with management to take the appropriate action. As I said, we can't provide anonymity. We do our best, but it's no one's protected when an investigation is not conducted for a complaint. So there's just, we all work together. We're all open. We're all, it's a transparent organization. And something bad happens to you at work, there's no anonymity. We'll do our best to the extent possible to protect it, but we're going to investigate and we're going to correct any problem that exists in the workplace. So why do they say, well, please don't tell anyone about it. I just want to get it off my chest and tell you what happened. Well, because they're afraid that they're going to get fired, for complaining about their boss, or that, the boss is going to find out, or that, their supervisor is going to find out that they complained, and then they'll get their hours taken away, or there'll be some kind of punishment in the workplace because they spoke up. That is not going to happen with this company. We have a non-retaliation policy, as you probably can guess. We also have, for the same reason, people are also afraid of retaliation when they are hesitant to be witnesses in an investigation because they're afraid of retaliation. We have a policy that absolutely forbids any member of management from retaliating against any employee for making a good faith complaint. Why do I say good faith complaint? And just before we move off the slide, here's another opportunity to jot down the hotline number and the hotline email address. If you ever have filed a complaint, someone retaliates against you because you did what you were told to do today, call this hotline, send an email, or file a complaint about the retaliation because the retaliation is an absolute violation of our policy and is prohibited. So even if the complaint turns out to be untrue, let's say you heard about a bad situation and you reported it and it turned out not to be true, but you had a good faith belief that it was actually true when you made the complaint, there will be no retaliation, no repercussions for that because you had a good faith belief that something was going wrong and had to be investigated. And we understand, sometimes wires get crossed and things turn out not to be true. No employee will ever be punished or disciplined, or no job action will ever be taken against any employee for making a good faith complaint. However, at the same time, people who make false complaints or make false statements during an investigation will be dealt with. It's not uncommon, right? Not uncommon in my business for employees to file complaints that aren't necessarily valid because they're trying as a diversion. Employees think, oh, well, I'm about ready to get fired for attendance. I better complain against my boss for sexual harassment. Well, that's investigated, turns out not to be true. False complaints will be dealt with accordingly. It's not fair to accuse people of things that are not true, and they'll also be dealt with just like any act of discrimination or harassment will be, because that's also casting a false light on someone and is equally unfair. So no retaliation for making a good faith complaint against any discrimination or harassment or bullying or unacceptable abusive conduct that we've talked about today. That's your guarantee from this company. And we've given you lots of ways to ensure that the company honors those guarantees to you, and that includes calling the attorney hotline anytime you want, just to tell them what's happening, and your complaints will be investigated. Now, we're just going to talk about a couple policies that we've enacted to try to prevent some behavior that turns out to be unacceptable. And the first one I want to talk about is our anti-nepotism policy. It's really kind of a combination of our anti-nepotism and fraternization policy. So nepotism is a relationship between family members, right? So you have a job and then you want to get a job for maybe your brother to work with you because it's a great place to work, right? That creates a situation, a familial relationship at work, and that's called nepotism. And the other kind of relationship that's formed at work is called fraternization, and that's when two employees decide to have a relationship together. And people say, well, I spend 90% of my waking hours, exaggeration, but okay, at work. Where else am I supposed to meet people? Where else am I supposed to, develop a social life? Well, my position is I want you to find other people to date besides your coworkers or your employees. I mean, it's the safest thing. If you're serious about your career, that's what you'll do. But obviously things happen, and we can put all the policies in the world together, and people still have relationships, and people still have relatives that want to come to work for us. And so the company reserves the right, with regard to nepotism, with regard to familial relationships, to either not hire somebody because of the relationship, or to hire them on a different shift or in a different department, or making sure that they're not in reporting positions. The company, through its anti-nepotism policy, reserves those rights because it wants to do what's right, what's best for you to ensure your success, and what's best for it. Because allowing these kinds of relationships in the workplace creates a perception, at least a perception, if not the reality, of favoritism, friction between people, conflicts of interest, whether they're real or perceived, and can also lead to sexual harassment and discrimination and other forms of prohibited conduct. When you don't have those relationships, you have less of a possibility of favoritism, right? Let's say you're dating, there's a supervisor dating a waitress. He's more likely, and the supervisor's a male, he might be more likely to give the best shifts to the person he's in a relationship with. Let's say your father's working at the club. He might be more inclined to give you, days off that other people don't get. It breeds special treatment, favoritism, and conflicts of interest, so we try to avoid it. So with relationships between family members, we try to manage that. Either we don't hire them, or we find other places for them to work where there's no conflict. When it comes to actual personal romantic relationships, first of all, we discourage it, right? Secondly, if it happens between coworkers, we ask the coworkers to, we require that coworkers immediately and independently disclose the relationship, and then the company may require that those people sign a relationship agreement. And what's the relationship agreement? It essentially is a written document where both parties acknowledge that this is a consensual, voluntarily entered into relationship, where one person is not exercising power over the other. There's no discrimination or harassment going on. There's no coercion. It's just a consensual relationship. And then they also agree to notify management when the relationship ends, or if it ends, because that way management can say, you know what, they're not in a relationship anymore. We better watch this. Make sure that there's no harassing going on. Everything's fine, but that everybody stays healthy and safe. With regard to managers, supervisors, and the people that they supervise, the company's policy generally forbids these relationships. But sometimes people come to work together as married couples or as already cohabitating, and things happen, and the company reserves the right to decide what to do about it, but they may also require a relationship agreement when you're dating someone, where a supervisor or manager dates someone they supervise. And So this is your opportunity, because this happens every year, right? Somebody says, I didn't even know this was a rule. And maybe tomorrow you'll be calling your manager, supervisor to disclose a relationship, because now's your time to do it. Now is the time that you have the amnesty to disclose and get the agreement signed and get in compliance with our nepotism slash fraternization policy. The next policy that we've promulgated to try to avoid some of the abusive behaviors that we've talked about today is our social media policy. And, of course, the company is very modern, 21st century, very, tech savvy. You can see you guys are, getting these wonderful presentations and cast member meetings, digitally and electronically all the time. So they understand the power of social media. They understand that it's become a part of everyday life. We also know that in our business, social media is a great way to promote our businesses and our services, and a good source of work-related communication. So that's recognized. But you all, whether you're a manager, supervisor, or one of our cast members, every employee of this company is an employee of this company, whether they're on the clock or off the clock, 24/7. Your behavior, whether you're on the clock or off the clock, can reflect on our business and bring harm to either the business, your coworkers, employees. Things you say on the internet have repercussions. Those of you that have been through some of our classes know that, we go through your social media pages and we say, wow, what do you think a jury would think of this posting, on your Facebook? What kind of message are you trying to send there? Everyone should look at their posts and ask themselves that question. Am I a good reflection? Is what I'm posting on the internet a good reflection of me, and is it going to reflect well on my employer? But the things that the policy addresses are the kinds of posts that can harm people, posts that are cruel or sexually explicit, or that are directed toward a certain employee, any kind of posting that is racist or disrespectful to any protected category would be a violation of this policy. So I ask you to take a look at the company's social media policy and make sure that your activities on and off the clock are in compliance with it. And I think that just brings us to our general standards of conduct. If it hasn't been clear, these policies that are listed there and the others that we've talked about, the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and the Age and Discrimination in Employment Act, and all the ones listed there are our policies against discrimination and bullying, and our pledge to treat everyone with equal employment opportunities. These are policies to let you know what your rights are, what you can expect from the company, what kind of work environment you can expect from the company, but also what kind of behavior is expected from you. And while it should go without saying, violation of these policies can result in termination of employment. So be careful, make sure you know what the policies are, make sure you know what behavior is expected of you, and treat each other with respect and dignity and courtesy and kindness. And you're going to be a successful employee. Now, did we get any questions that we want to?
So far, no.
Now, that's really, really, really disappointing, guys. There's not one thing that we said that made you, that triggered a question in your mind. If you have questions, text them to 702-466-7999. We'll wait for a couple minutes. And There's nothing in the chat line either. Nothing on chat. If you don't have questions for us, I know that we're going to have questions for you, and it'll be coming in a written form. So take good care when you respond to the questionnaire, or should we call it a test, that you'll be getting, because that will be the fodder of our next seminar with you. We're going to go over your answers and see how much you remembered. But it's an open book test, because every answer is in your handbook. So those of you that haven't read it, this is a good time to pull it out, dust it off, and give it a read.
No questions.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. I've enjoyed it. This is a really, really exciting company to work for. Congratulations on being made part of it. Oh. Do you want me to introduce you? No.
Thank you, Miss Deanna. Isn't she lovely? And she's so smart. Thank you so much for participating in our legal seminar. We hope that you're all being very nice and sweet to each other, so we can all enjoy being a part of this network of fun. And speaking of fun, I want to give a nice shout out to Miss Kira in Bakersfield for inspiring this lovely outfit. 2024. We're all in. We're booked and busy. We're nice and fancy. Thank you, Miss Kira. Speaking of superstars, let's talk about our superstar sellers. We have some new historical bests exceeding their sales goal streaks. We have 1 week streaks at the Larry Flint's Hustler Club in New Orleans. Way to go, New Orleans. Woo! Good job out there. Selling everything. And we have Larry Flint's Hustler Club in New York, Cats Meow in New Orleans, and Gay 90s in Minneapolis. Good job, everybody. Woo! Take a bow, take a bow. Let's get more weeks and more streaks. And the 2 week streak goes out to Stockton. And if you know Reggie, he's very excited right now watching this. We love you, Reggie, and we miss you. Good job, Stockton. And now we can't forget our social media superstars. You should go follow all of them. Everybody should be following everyone, hearting, liking, sharing, submitting your content to your content managers, keeping in touch with your content creators. Submit, submit, submit. So the most liked, we had Las Vegas with over 86,000 followers on Facebook. That's a lot of people. And 33,000 followers on Instagram goes out to St. Louis, Washington Park. Way to go. Keep posting. And the most followed is Las Vegas with 86,000. That's crazy. So many people. 33,000 for St. Louis, again, most followed. And the top post reach was for Larry Flint's Hustler Club in Las Vegas. They got 96,000 people with one post. That's crazy, guys. And they submit over 1,200 pieces of content every month. So the more you submit, the more likely you are to get people to see your content, see your entertainers, and want to come visit you. Get them excited to come in the door. And finally, we have our overall superstar nominations. These are the people in your clubs and venues that you say thank you to. You're awesome. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing. Let's give a shout out to Bridget and Nadia in New Orleans. Good job, Bridget and Nadia at the Hustler Club. And Deja Vu Showgirls in Lansing. Sapphire, great job. Thank you so much. And we have a lot in Las Vegas. Avery P, Fernando C, Trees B, Nia D, and Anai C. Good job, y'all. And in Little Darlings, Oklahoma, Victoria, TJ, and Desiree. Awesome. Keep it up, Oklahoma. And Deja Vu Showgirls, Oklahoma, Brennan McCloy. Good job, Brennan. And Larry Flint's Hustler Club in Washington Park, Jules Fisher, Molly Moonshine, and Megan. Blake Kaiser and Tantum. Good job, you guys. Thank you so much for all your hard work. And at Boutique Erotica, Washington Park, Kira Powers, Charlie Atkins, and Holly Elser. Good job. Thank you. And Larry Flint's Hustler Club in Shreveport, Jesse and Rebecca Rivera. Great job. Thank you. And Deja Vu Showgirls in Sacramento, Aiko and Kata. Thank y'all so much for making someone's day extra special. We really appreciate you. And you can watch a replay of this video on the Go Best YouTube channel if you scan here. Thank y'all so much. Thank you for watching. Happy New Year. Love y'all. Bye.